Imperial Oil is committed to answering those questions.
So answer them now where we can all hear you.
What we've got is the opportunity to do that. When this was set up and Imperial Oil came along, and Ken I think can address this was set up as an opportunity for people to come in at any time, so that they're not committed to come in for a full 3-hour period. They're committed at any time they can come in. And they can get that kind of information, move on, and get what they need as information. And not be stuck here for the entire meeting unless they want to be here.
We want to be here.
I hear you, and you'd like to do that, and you know what, I'll go and see if we can get another room where we can get some folks that want to just sit through a meeting, and we could look at doing that.
We can
So,
have a meeting right here.
What I'd like to do, though, is have a meeting also that'll meet the needs of people that would like to just find out how the process works. Because we don't have a presentation for the process, so you're not going to learn from the presentations.
We have that right here. We'll learn from our critics.
So what we'll do is we'll go up and see if we can work out something here with Kooskia. I'll get back with you in just a few minutes.
That's sort of they arranged on fairly short notice. They arranged to do a question and answer session in Moscow. But maybe I guess Moscow is considered a little different than Kooskia. You know, maybe we're not quite as up to snuff or something. But anyway, so Jim is going to go see if there can be a place that we could gather.
That never really makes sense, because we're the ones that are most impacted.
We're the ones that are most impacted. Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, they wanted to inform the public, and so it seems to me that this is the way to inform the public. They have an opportunity to inform the residents of this Upper Clearwater area, and so here's their chance. Well, yes, I guess. No, you want to inform them, but they didn't come here to listen to you. They came here to tell you how it's going to be.
I do believe that everybody here is willing to sit on the floor, stand up, whatever we have to do to hold a meeting.
I just checked in the upstairs area has been changed since I was here last, and LCS now has that, and they might have computers being set up, so we won't have that to use. So what we'll do is we'll do what if this is what you want to do, we'll certainly modify it. There is no presentation, so you're not going to learn a lot of stuff other than a lot of misinformation might be coming up, and we'll see what we can do with that.
What about questions? Can we ask
You bet, you bet. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go with about 20 minutes for folks to get around and ask questions, read these displays so you'll know as much as we can, and then about 10 minutes to 5. We'll set up and we'll see if we can't get a little area here set to do some questions. What I want to do is first tell you that the ITD permit process, which is what this is to permit oversized loads, is founded in Idaho code. And in Idaho code, the people that want to carry a large load are allowed to bring a large load in onto the United States or state highway system. The fees that are set up to do that are set up as both a permitting process fee as well as a fee for road damage. And that formula is also in Idaho code.
Jim, people can't hear back here. Could you use the mic?
Well, I've got some chairs here, Linwood. If you could come up here and some of the others, see, let's fill. Okay, well let me, since we're not using these chairs, let me get back. I always found it odd to have that.
It might work.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, now we finished, I've talked to you about what the permitting process is, so you get a little idea of where that goes. So, I'll start to answer questions, and we'll start with someone on this side of the room. In the back with the green.
Where are we in the permitting process? There's a list over there of all of the levels of the permitting process. Where are we?
There has been no permit issued, but where they're at this point is they've now submitted a second draft of their traffic control plan to the Transportation Department. That was done, I believe, either Thursday or Friday of last year. And so that will now be reviewed by the Idaho Transportation Department as well as by DEQ, who also reviews the permit. And then the decision then goes forward from there to making the permit process. After we get the comment sheet forms in, which are due, I think, the 14th, the goal that the department has for Imperial Oil is for them to respond to all those questions get those posted out on the website so that you can see what your questions were and that they were answered. And that we hope to have done around the 1st of August. And as far as the schedule of what they want to do from there, I defer to Ken on that, if he's got a schedule that you have from there. But that's kind of how you do the permitting process.
If we were successful in getting the permits from the Idaho Transportation Department and Montana Department of Transportation, the first modules would move early November of this year, roughly last over a period of 1 year.
Okay, let's go on this. Okay, right here.
I have a question. If they don't have the permits already, why is all this going through? I mean, aren't you supposed to have the permits before you start this kind of a program?
The question is, why are they starting on work if they don't already have a permit?
Yeah.
That's kind of paraphrased. In order to get a permit, to be able to haul a load like this, they're going to go through a process of determining whether they can haul this safely. And that's what their traffic control plan is. When they came to us and said, we'd like to, this is what we're doing, and they contact our Boise headquarters and say, we want to do an oversized permit for a load. There's a set process, and they're going through that process. They go through and they have to be able to show us a traffic control plan that will effectively show that they can safely haul that load, minimize delays through Idaho. And so they have to be able to demonstrate to us before they go on. And part of that is when they first met with us, they said we wanted to have some information meetings. And so that's why they're here today, as far as their information meeting, to be able to tell you what it is they would be doing on the highway, what their load is. But that is, it's pretty typical of all the loads that we get. There's a kind of a lead time in front of the permit where they're doing all the prep work to be able to demonstrate that they can safely do the work. I'm going to go on this side of the room. Is there someone? I thought I had it. Okay, this gentleman.
We're being told that emergency services vehicles can just radio these state troopers and they can get this thing out of the way so that they can get ambulances and fire trucks around them. The state police radio systems in this state can't talk to most of the emergency services vehicles in this area. And once they do their changeover to 700 megahertz, nobody's going to be able to talk to them. How are we actually going to address that?
Okay, question is, how do they get emergency services through? And Lonnie Richardson's here with Idaho State Police. And Lonnie, do you want to fill that a little bit with how the communication system works?
I do. First of all, we're not changing to 700 megahertz in the near future. And if we do, it'll be long past the loads are gone. The state police has in its vehicle VHF and UHF radios. So anybody who's on a VHF frequency EMS, we can talk to them directly. If we can't talk to them directly, then we can talk to Idaho County directly, who then talks to the EMS people. So we will be with every load, and if there's an emergency, we'll know well in advance that it's coming, and then we will be in contact with the caravan, including the driver, and do the necessary steps to get it out of the way so that people can go online.
What about the 85% of the people who go to Clearwater Valley Hospital emergency rooms in personal vehicles? Only 15% go in ambulances. Those of us in personal vehicles won't have radios and won't have any advance notice, and we won't have a way to get around it.
The question is, if you came up with an emergency and you were trying to go directly to the hospital in a personal vehicle rather than being in an ambulance. And I know Ken answered this question yesterday, so we'll just have Ken do that again.
The first thing we did is we looked at, let me back up a bit. We have identified what we call 58 clearing locations, or spots where we could pull the module off out of the way, and so vehicles can go by us to meet the 15-minute maximum delay. In addition to that, what we've identified is all the small turnouts along the road where we can't use them, but vehicles, small personal vehicles can use them. We've also identified all driveways and access to properties off Highway 12, which you can use you can pull a personal vehicle off there. So in an emergency situation, if someone was up on towards Lola Pass and they were coming down going west on Highway 12, in an emergency situation, you would hope that you would have their flashers on to advise traffic that they're coming that way. A lot of cases when a family emergency happens, you don't think that well. You just want to get in your car and get the person that you want to get to the hospital as fast as you can. As we said, Idaho State Police will be in front with the vehicle. They will also be behind with the vehicle, as well as with escort vehicles. If this vehicle is coming towards them at a fast speed, they will see the flashing lights and the sign over side of the road approaching. At that point in time, we would have to flag that vehicle down, determine what the situation is, and if it's truly an emergency situation, then the Idaho State Police and the escort vehicles.
Sounds like a lot of time is going by, and
Well, let me-
I'm going into anaphylactic shock as I
Okay.
did once,
Let-
and
let-
almost died. I might
Yeah.
die there on the highway.
Let-
How will you feel if one of us dies on the highway, or one of our children dies on the highway, because you're in the way?
Let me continue here for a minute. And so that policy, from that position, the state police could advise to stop the module at the next place where a personal vehicle can pull off to the side of the road. We can pull the module by, and then that vehicle could go on the way. Again, if this is in a non-announced emergency situation, the state police could probably assist that vehicle in getting to the medical facility that it's going for.
They can't assist them around you. There's no way they can do that.
Okay, so let me explain a bit better, then obviously I didn't do a good job. If this emergency personal vehicle is coming towards us, we stop the module in front of a small turnout or in front of a driveway. The personal vehicle pulls into that small turnout or the driveway, the module goes by. As soon as the module goes by, that personal vehicle continues on the way. Now it's in an announced position, and the state police would, if required, could escort that vehicle to the medical
If
facility.
you park your 10-foot module in front of my driveway,
No, not in front of your driveway, but before your driveway, and so if,
so then I go into the driveway and you crawl along and then I come out of my driveway?
come out of that driveway.
We're
and-
talking about significant lifetime here.
How long is that gonna
We're
take?
talking about our lives.
Okay, so if you looked at this and you'd have to do some calculations on how big advance notice we would have to do that, and the maximum delay, it wouldn't be anywhere close to the 15 minutes, because there's numerous small turnouts and driveways along the route. And so you are talking minutes, but then again, you have a state police that probably can assist you to get to that medical facility faster than you would otherwise.
Have you ever been over that road?
Yes, I have been over it about 6 times.
That's not enough. Not there enough.
Okay, let's see, I think I was on this side of the room. Right here, you had a question? Yes.
Given what's happened with BP and their mishap, what they were prepared for, what happens when we have the mishap with one of your huge trucks and it goes into our river or whatever, and just how long is it going to take you to get that thing moved, and what provisions do you have to move it?
Well, there's two questions really. One is, I'm going to say, it's like a mechanical failure of a truck, so that when you stop in the middle of the road, you couldn't get the module by. And the other would be if you were to have, you're saying if one of these were to go into the river. Well, the first one for the module setup, they've got a contingency plan that's been done, and the contingency plan, if you have a mechanical failure, is that when they're in the flat areas, they're in a push-me-pull-me setup with their trucks, and so they can reverse.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Hold the mic closer to your mouth, please.
They've got a push-me-pull-me setup for their truck, which allows you to be able to come this way, or we could reverse if we had to with the truck and move it back to the next module. So if they had a mechanical breakdown, they can go back to the next turnout or move forward to the other turnout, depending on which vehicle broke down, and then be prepared. You know, they'd have to stop there and wait at that turnout until they could get their repairs and start again in the next evening cycle, the next 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. evening cycle. As far as the probabilities of one of these loads going into the river, one of the things, and you may not all be aware of this, is that one of the things that they'll be doing is they'll be running a test module that will come through. That'll be their first permit. It'll be a test module that comes through. it will be the size in terms of the width and the height of the largest module. And then when they run that through, we'll be able to follow how that tracks all the way through it, and to make sure that it stays within the footprint of the pavement that we're going to allow them to be. So there's adequate edge support of the pavement, so they won't be damaging the pavement. Therefore, they're not going to have spots to be able to fall over. So,
You've been on record
if,
for it pretty
and
lately,
no,
mister.
no,
Trucks up there.
How much that test module weigh?
it's not, Ken, you know what it weighs?
Destroying our road.
It's not the maximum weight on this test.
So it's not a real test, is it?
Well, it's a test with respect to the overall size of how
Not
much
for the
load.
weight.
Okay, so there's other things that we're thinking about to do to this test validation module to put extra weight on it, but basically initially it was designed for the maximum width and height.
What's your biggest obstacle right now for attaining your first permit for this test run? What's stopping you?
Well, they haven't got an approved traffic control plan at this point. So
Who approves
until
it?
it's approved, in this case, it's approved by Idaho Transportation Department and DEQ, and it also goes to ISP. We'll be looking at that permit. Okay, next.
So you should be
Question
talking
here?
about transportation.
I'd like to know why
Excuse me, could I have
Answer
it
my
quiet for a moment and
question.
allow?
You
this
didn't
lady-
answer my question though, because what are you going to do to get it out of the river? And how long is it gonna take?
Well, to remove it from the river, I'm sure they'll have to bring in the piece of equipment adequate to lift it. Now, how long and where it would take would depend on where it fell in at.
And how many
And that-
jobs are on the line that have to go down that road each and every day while they're waiting for that to happen?
If it was in the river, they would be able to go up and down the road. That wouldn't be an impact to it, so I don't think that would be an issue.
Not when there's.
You know, I want to, let's go through and give this lady a chance to ask her question. I will get to you, and let's just be courteous, take our time, and we'll make sure everybody gets a chance to answer, ask at least one question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to know why it is that you chose this particular route to transport this equipment as opposed to some other route. Is this the most direct and less populated? Or could you have gone another route?
You don't want to walk the Lewiston Hill, lady. You don't want to.
Let's let him answer her question.
So when we looked at alternate routes to get these pieces of equipment to the Canadian site, is we did look at Canadian routes, and unfortunately the Canadian routes have obstacles along the way of low overpasses or avalanche sheds which we can't get underneath, or old style what we call truss bridges that are made of steel and iron with sort of roofs on them, not roofs but structures on the top that would prevent the size of these modules to go through. The route that we propose to use through Idaho and Montana has been used by other movers of large oversized equipment coming out of Alberta and going to Australia. And so this route has been used for oversized loads. And so they looked at that, and then they also looked at, if you came up from Houston area, and this route is the most effective route to move the equipment that we were planning to move.
Is it also the cheapest?
Yes.
It's certainly, when we evaluate where we're going to buy the equipment from, we look at cost, we look at quality, we look at the performance of the company who's going to
You don't look at us,
manufacture.
do you? You don't really care about us, do you?
Is that your question?
I got a question.
Okay, if you'd like to ask your question, please go ahead.
Yeah, is this route, a route across eastern Canada has been used before, plus the one up that's been used most of the time up from the Gulf? Why not use that?
Okay, when before I arrived on the project, team had looked at the route from the east coast of Canada. They looked at that, and it's longer route, more expensive. Also, that the lock system, it freezes in the winter times through the Great Lakes, and so it limits your shipping window.
Our roads are covered over Lolo Pass in the winter.
We're taking that into consideration when we look at the shipping, when we can ship the modules. Certain periods of time during the winter, we won't be able to move the modules. We recognize that.
Why is money so important for the biggest?
Okay, let's ask someone else. I know you want to kind of ask a lot of questions, but could you ask me a question?
Like Alan's question.
But I wanted to make sure that we were courteous and let everybody ask a question. So let's just let everybody get a shot. Question. Okay, I think I called on her, then I'll get to you next, okay?
First, a couple of comments, okay? Number one, shame on ITD for even considering this. And number two, I think pretty much everyone in this room, probably the same in Moscow and Lewiston, probably everybody, like I said, most everybody here feels pretty much hoodwinked by this whole process.
No, we don't.
Not all of them. I said pretty much, okay? So I'd like to know how long has this planning been going on behind closed doors before we ever got a glimmer of an idea that this is gonna happen?
The permits, the first time that these folks contacted our Boise permit office, Mundo, about when was that?
About 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago is when they first requested a permit. And we quite often have quite long lead lengths on permits. I don't know if you're aware that we do have issued permits up and down this river route and other routes in Idaho before. We have those. Now, this gentleman right here,
Well, I'm
I'd
gonna
ask
say-
him.
I'm
No,
gonna say this because I was at a Idaho County Commissioners meeting last fall, and there was a group of, I presume Exxon and their public relations people at that meeting. It was not a meeting to get permission or to have questions. It was all it was a courtesy meeting to tell them that this is what was gonna happen.
Okay, take your question then.
Well, I'm Everett Noakes from up in Clearwater County. You know, that's where they do everything that they want to do. Well, up in Canada, I haul. You've got to be a heavy hauler. You've got to have a damn good driver's license up there. I mean good. Perfect. Now, where's your bond at that you're going to put up to haul on these roads so when you tear them up, the taxpayers won't have to pick it up? The ISP, them guys are busy. They can't be sitting there bottle feeding some of you trucks that want to go 4 miles an hour. They're not going to cut down that road at 40 miles an hour. Now, the thing is, how many people are going to be waiting for the emergency vehicles? And this caravan's going through, probably 5 at a time. And they're going to blow tires, they're going to have breakdowns, they're going to have that public thoroughfare. People depend on that. Are you going to supply a couple of helicopters to get people out that need to get out? I can land a helicopter on that highway just about anywhere.
Give us your number.
Okay, the first thing with respect to the drivers, of course, you need a very experienced driver to drive these pull-push trucks, and they will come both from Canada and the United States. Mammoet is a large organization worldwide, but it's also very large in North America, and they will be using their specialized drivers who have driven this type of equipment before. Second, with respect to the Idaho State Police, we have been in discussion with the Idaho State Police on providing escort service, which we will pay for, and which will be off-duty police officers, and not impact the normal duty that the Idaho State Police does.
What color is your bond?
At this point in time, we have submitted our plans to the Idaho Transportation Department. They are reviewing our plans to see if they comply with what they need to go over the roads and bridges. And once they've done that evaluation, then we will have to talk about, and they wouldn't allow these vehicles to move over the roads if they thought they were going to damage the roads. That's legal.
They're living on our roads right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, this gentleman hasn't asked a question.
How much did we put in, did you guys put in for the road widening that just went on this last year?
The project from,
Yeah.
that was entirely funded with gas tax funds and did not involve Imperial Oil. It was in the planning for a long time.
That was in the planning and
Yeah.
ready to go before they came involved with their money.
Yes, it was.
Just a coincidence.
There was a report in the paper of 2 to 5 tons of rock fill that ExxonMobil paid for. Was the newspaper wrong?
ExxonMobil, you know what they asked was,
Imperial Exxon
Oh.
paid
Let me answer a question here, and I recognize you want to get in there, but the question that was asked was the Syringa to Tumble Creek project out on US Trail. And that was funded at 100% with gas tax, dedicated dollars that are picked up at the gas pump and what you pay in your registration, the normal cycle that we pay fees. Now, you're asking, did Exxon pay, Imperial Exxon Oil, did they pay to do any turnout improvements? And they paid to gravel a series of turnouts. And I believe they paid around $400,000 out of their pockets to do that, independent of that project. And those turnouts weren't on that project. They were in other locations. Or
Why
they
would
wanted
they
to
invest
fund
that money if they weren't going to get their permission?
I'm sure glad to give this to Ken. I mean, that's gonna be up to him. That's a risk that he's taking involved in, and I'm not sure why they do that. I believe they've taken whatever they've done before on the project. So, over here, this gentleman in the blue shirt.
My question is for Ken. In the day's paper, it mentions that there is going to be $10.6 million economic benefit, and most of it going to the people that are driving the wide load pickups. Are they getting $1,000 an hour?
A little clarity on that comment.
Well, here it is.
Oh, yeah, I
The
read.
hauling would bring $10.6 million to Idaho, with most for the wages of the drivers of vehicles that would have the oversized load signs, Johnson says. That's you.
That's me. What I said was that money was for the escort vehicles. It would be the money we'd be paying Idaho State Police to provide escort. It would be the money for the flaggers to put up the signs at the turnouts and the traffic control, and costs that are really being paid to people from Idaho doing the work while we move through Idaho.
$10.6 million?
There's a lot of people that we would employ during the process of moving these modules through Idaho.
And you've already spent $400,000 up there. Where are you going to get that money?
When we were agreed to spend the $400,000, we had looked at other oversized loads that had moved on Highway 12, and we felt confident in our mind that we could meet the requirements that Idaho Transportation Department would put on us to move these loads through Idaho.
So can anybody apply for one of those jobs?
Yes, but it's wages, it's also vehicle costs, because they'll be in vehicles as they move down the road, etc.
They just said for wages, most of it for wages. So.
Are you also paying wages then to the ITD for the escort service?
ITD is not doing this.
I'm sorry, to the Idaho State Police?
I can respond to that.
Okay.
If in fact, we haven't signed a contract yet, but if in fact we do, they will be reimbursing the state police and the state of Idaho 100%. Because wages, benefits, vehicle maintenance, fuel, any expense that we would incur is going to be reimbursed 100% should the contract be signed.
There's a gentleman here in a tan shirt.
Thank you. One thing that I haven't heard yet, I know Orofino has a prison, major prison. They also have a state hospital. I appreciate that the plan is to do this at night, but they don't stop at night. They go 24 hours a day. If there's a major disturbance at that prison, they're going to be calling in something like 170 staff. Now, are you going to be willing to just shut this rig down? You got staff living in Syringa and a lot of staff living in Lewiston. I mean, you're going to have to pull over. These staff aren't going to be responding at the same time like it would be for a single emergency vehicle. There would be multiple vehicles responding over several hours. Have you planned for that?
Lonnie, I can respond to that. Once again, should the state police escort them, emergencies take precedence over moving load. So, and I'm sure I will be aware, as my department will be aware, that if there's a prison problem, or medical emergency, or anything like that, that always takes precedence, and will take precedence over the load from the state police's viewpoint. Which means that the closest spot that we can pull them out and get them safely off the road, that's where they'll go and that's where they'll stay until we believe the emergency is over.
Do we absolutely have to use these big trucks? Do they have to be this big? Can they be any smaller? And is there any other way that you can get whatever you're carrying on those trucks in a different form of transportation?
This plan that we have relies on using these trucks and the size of modules that we'd like to ship through Idaho and Montana.
You have to use that bigger one, so that's what I'm saying.
Yes. If it wouldn't, be from an economic point of view, if you were to ship smaller loads, you might make a different decision on where you would manufacture that equipment.
In the very back is a fellow light.
Clarify that these are all these loads are supposed to, they're gonna happen at night. And how many, I'm sure you guys did some studies, how many people use that stretch of road during the night?
Okay, the question is, when do they run? And they'd be limited to run from, I think it's 10 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. said. So in that ballpark is what they would run. They can only run one load on each segment at a time. So they'll only be able to, there's two segments that basically they run on this. So they can run two of those at the same time, one on each segment. As far as the traffic on the lock saw, we have automatic traffic counters there that ITD keeps track of at all times. We've got about 1,000 vehicles a day, roughly 1,200 that would run in that area in the summertime. And of that number, this is up in the Syringa area, it gets a little more as you go further down. Of that number, about 10% of those vehicles would run at night during that time period. About 90% of those run during all the rest of the hours. So they would amount to about 10 vehicles per hour, maybe 5 each direction.
Are those local people that are driving trucks to make a living, that are counting on being able to get through?
Some would be trucks and some would be other people using the road. The delay would be limited to 15 minutes. They would
How
have,
is
just
that
like what we do
possible?
for
How is
construction.
it possible that it's every 15 minutes? Is there a pull-out every 15 minutes for sure that they can get around?
The question is, are there enough pullouts to ensure that you can have a 15-minute delay? And that's a good question, and that is one of the questions that we've actually done this before with not as heavy a load, where we've actually done, and we've stopped traffic, and they've done this many times with other permits, with either just wide or just tall loads, in which we had to shut the highway down, in which then they have 15 minutes to complete that. In this particular case, they'll be, when they do their simulation, which while it'll be a light load, they'll be simulating the speed that they plan to travel at that. They'll have to demonstrate that they can complete each one of those segments in 15 minutes. And that's what part of that will be proven out at that time. Right behind you for your question.
Is someone really going to tow my pickup and horse trailer off the site when I'm in the mountains elk hunting? I talked with a police officer and I said, what happens if you come to a site and there's a vehicle there? And I was informed, we'll tow it. Is that going to happen? Is that the plan if somebody's parked?
You were informed incorrectly. I don't know who told you, but incorrectly. We don't have the authority to tow a vehicle unless it is a hazard to the roadway or has been there 48 hours.
48 hours. Well, the person who called me was the person who I was told was in charge of the state police operation for this.
We won't be towing vehicles.
You won't be towing vehicles.
So how will you get in that?
We may not.
So then how are you going to 15 minutes?
This gentleman, you have this question.
Well, yes. I lived in Alaska 32 years. I was up there during the Exxon Valdez spill 21 years ago, if I remember right. And a lot of those claims are still not settled yet. That's how fast Exxon pays its bills. That's just an observation. And the second thing is, $10.8 million benefit to Idaho wouldn't even pay the golf fees of the CEO of Exxon. That's just very little perceived benefit for painting the mustache on the Mona Lisa. I just don't understand Idaho's attitude here.
Well, to answer that question, the fees that are established in Idaho code establish what the permit process is that they are charged. That's the fee, and that's established in Idaho code. The Transportation Department, we administer that code, we do not write that code. So that's.
Well, could Exxon kick in something to our poor school systems, something to sweeten the kitty a little bit? This pill would go down easier if there were some perceived benefits.
Yeah, it's a public road, and they wouldn't be required to. It's a public road that we allow people to use.
You're not destroying it.
Okay, let me, now,
Well,
did I answer your question?
no, it really doesn't. What is the benefit for the people of Idaho, this area? I just don't see the benefit. $10.8 million is not persuasive.
And I guess what I'm telling you is that the law in Idaho code provides that they can be issued these permits. And so by issuing these permits, and they don't cause road damage beyond what is assessed in the permit, and that's what it is.
There'll be no road damage.
Okay, let's get someone else who hasn't asked a question yet, right back here.
I'm going to create a lot of hate and discontent, I'm afraid. I'm a trucker. I've been involved in heavy haul all my life, and police escorts and whatnot. But anyhow, right now I currently have my old Farks job where I haul chips to Missoula every night from midnight. I leave here and then I come back down the river to Lewiston. And I have no qualms at all with maybe losing a half hour a day, waiting for these loads. I have no problem at all with that. Being a heavy hauler, I see lots of improvements because one of the biggest obstacles around is overhead wires. And these are all going to be buried or raised, and we won't have to mess with those anymore at all, on Highway 12 and Highway 200. Reserve Street in Missoula is going to get fixed so they can haul safely wide, tall loads down through there. And I've dealt with the Idaho Transportation Department enough in Montana and Alberta to know that their engineers are not going to allow super permits if it's going to truck the roadway. These trucks have so many axles and tires under them, they're going to do less damage. It's like the bed of nails analogy. I know that the ITD isn't going to issue a permit if they think it's going to truck the roads and the bridges. I saw an incident the day before the Memorial Day weekend that allowed more weight on one side of the Arrow Bridge than what these loads are going to put on. There was a mistake with the pilot, the flaggers on the bridge. That's the bridge that's under construction, only one lane's open. They slowed all the traffic down. There were 3 of us chip trucks, each one weighed 101 to 103,000, and there were 4 logging trucks, each weighing 80,000 and we were all in one lane, and they stopped us on the bridge. Do the math. That's more than what these weigh, and it's just on one side of the bridge. These loads will be doing like what Montana requires, under their DW21 conditions, center line on all the bridges. Well, they have to because of the width anyway. That's part of the deal to distribute the weight. Anyhow, I'm all for it.
Okay, let's ask, let's go to this side of the room. And have you asked a question yet?
I have not.
Okay.
20 years ago, plus minus, U.S. Forest Service designated this as a scenic corridor. Why? Just look. It's a beautiful place, and I think you're encountering some resistance to your idea of hauling big stuff through and ruining the view. It's an inconvenience, I believe, to people. I guess my question for you is, what consideration have you given as an organization, as a company, to maintaining the natural beauty that we value and is part of the reason why we live here? I'd be interested in knowing exactly the process that you went through to understand that, to mitigate against that, or to, in some way, remedy the problem.
When we looked at moving process equipment from Korea to our project site, we have moved in the past and moved to another. Heavy haulers have done this from Edmonton and also Calgary and Alberta. Different pieces of equipment, heavy equipment up to the site. and they have done it successfully over the roads in Alberta.
Yeah, but they've got 3 or 4 lane roads up there.
But the roads they take, excuse me for a sec, the roads they take are 2-lane roads off the
Not between
main.
Edmonton and Calgary, not between Edmonton and North either. I'm from Canada, and up there, those people know how to build a road. They put a gravel probably 4 feet deep and work on it for months before they ever think of putting on 6 inches of blacktop. Here, our roads are made with maybe 2 or 3 loads of gravel and maybe 2 inches of blacktop, and you think you're not going to ruin our roads?
So I have to correct you here, ma'am. I apologize for that, but the fact is, Highway 2 between Calgary and Edmonton is not the road we use to haul the equipment on. We use a road east of Highway 2, which is a 4-lane highway. Has the same problems as Interstate 90 or Interstate 15 with with overpasses that you can't move equipment. So we move on a series of roads east of the major north-south roads in Alberta to get the equipment to our construction site.
Okay, let's go to this side of the room. Did we have
Could we have an answer
a question?
to that? I'm not sure we got the answer.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, sorry, I got diverted for another
I'm
question.
sorry. Could we let the gentleman answer the question first?
Okay, could you help me again with, just start the question?
I'd like to know the process that you went through to understand the implications of what you're doing or proposing to do and its impact on the visual shed, shall we say, not the watershed, but the visual impact to an area that is, I mean, how many times do you want to transport heavy equipment through a wilderness and along a river? People here value the view. They don't value large, heavy equipment being hauled and ruining why it is that people live here.
They don't look at the river at night.
Yes, they do. They're sleeping alongside of it.
Okay, so when
I'm specific to answer for a question.
Okay.
Specifically, what process did you go through to understand the implications of what you're proposing to do on a wild and scenic corridor in north central Idaho?
Okay, so when we looked at the equipment that we moved through Alberta and through the rest of Canada on similar sized roads, 2-lane highways, so we don't have overhead restrictions, etc. And we looked at and the past experience of other haulers moving oversized equipment on the same US 12 through Idaho, and the fact that we were moving at night, from a visual impact, during the day, if we're parked at milepost 139 on the way towards Lolo Pass, people will be driving by that and be able to see the module, yes.
If I understand you, sir, you have not responded to, have you in fact looked at its visual impact on this community in light of the fact that it is a designated wild and scenic corridor?
We believe we won't have there will be a visual sight when the module is parked at milepost 139 at the Kooskia. That is during the day, and then it moves on at night. So the visual impact, it's not a long-term, we're not modifying the road in any way, we're not creating new turnouts, we're using the existing structure along the road as it exists. So from a visual impact point of view, we are not changing the road or the sites along the road.
I have a couple questions. One, you keep referencing past permits that have been given, as if sort of we've already had a precedent set for oversized hauling. If we do grant this permit, what sort of future precedent are we setting for hauling big rigs up this road? Is one question. And then two, mentioning mile 139, for instance, I work for Riverdance Lodge and for Row Adventures, and we're out on the water every day. So that does have a huge impact to our guests that we're taking down the river on a wild and scenic river, one of the 8 original ones designated. That has a huge impact for us and a huge negative impact for our guests that are getting ready to put on a river that's bordered by a wilderness area and national forest. So So it's not just a minor impact in that it's short term, it's a huge impact for the tourism industry here. Even though it is short term, you're not modifying the road. Having those rigs there really deters people from wanting to come out and spend time on the water in this area. And that does impact the local economy. So I sort of wanted to make a reference to that. But my real question is, what sort of precedent, it's more towards you, I think, what sort of precedent is the state of Idaho setting if we allow this to happen?
Well, the precedence is currently in Idaho code, which provides for issuing permits on the United States highway to handle oversized loads, as long as they meet our requirements to safely haul a load. So it's there, and we've been hauling loads oversized and dimensional. Some of them have been heavy, and some of them have been wide, with not as many as this group. And since, I believe, since 2000, wasn't it, Mundo? We've issued 250 of these style of permits for oversized loads on US 12. So does go on, and then you do have them. They're not as big as this, so I mean, let's not argue about whether the Exxon ones are bigger. Some of them are higher and wider, and some of them are shorter. These particular loads, they add all of those components together, so they are special.
What's the gross weight on some of those?
And I believe the largest gross weight, Ken, was
580,000 pounds.
580,000.
You're gonna tear the road down.
Oh, you bet you'll tear up the
You
road.
bet you are.
Well, I would disagree with you on
They
that.
got a deal down in Oregon that you can buy bonds. I bought one set. That's what we need in place, a bond for anything small.
But certainly is not what's provided currently in Idaho code.
Well, I don't care what the Idaho code says, it's the taxpayers' money, it's gonna replace that road.
When Exxon is hauling these loads are issued, or these permits are issued one at a time. If they damage the highway and it's something we can visually see, then they would have to make those repairs before they can get another permit to make
Then
another.
it'll be a cumulative effect.
And that cumulative effect is exactly how asphalt highways are designed. And that is what they're done, is on a life cycle design analysis, and that's what is provided for in the permit, is to cover that fee.
Following year,
That
it's
life
fall
cycle design.
apart.
This gentleman over here.
I'd like to just add one comment to what this gentleman said and this young lady said over here. About the visual impact, it's not one load, it's 207 loads. It's going to be a constant visual impact for the better part of a year. That's all.
Okay.
How much did it cost Exxon Imperial to raise all the power lines? And how many did you do that?
See, okay. 180 locations at one point.
Right there on the socio-economic impacts for Idaho, we permanently raised our buried utility lines at approximately 180 locations and generated a total estimated economic activity of 1.6 million to the state of Montana by doing that work. And most of those were communication lines.
But what about the $150 million?
Oh, sorry, did I say Montana? I'm sorry, I meant to say Idaho.
What about the $150 million tourism industry, which she has pointed out is going to affect them and over 100 other businesses on the river?
Tell her those rafters don't go down there.
It's a lot more than that amount you're spending on the road.
Okay, let's see if we can get another question. So it's on this side.
I didn't
This
get an
lady,
answer. We want to know about our
It's a
tourism
question
industry.
to Exxon Imperial, and that is, it's hard for me to imagine a company of your size that hasn't also been looking at Plan B if you're not issued all of the permits. And so I want to know two things. Is one, what is Plan B if these permits are not issued? And the second question to ITD is, if there is large enough public outcry about this area, will that deter you and will you go to Plan B? I'd like to know what that is.
Our Plan B would force us to go back and do some re-engineering with respect to the process equipment and the modules that we would plan to build in Korea and make up other plans.
Let's do that.
Okay.
This one's for you, and I'm kind of backing up what this lady just said. Clearly, we're all residents of this valley, and clearly, 99.9% of us are not in favor of this. We're offended, and we're hurt, and we're frustrated, and we're concerned. We're voters, we're taxpayers, we're residents, we're all of these things.
Business people.
Business people, thank you, and name a few more. We're all of these things. This is our community. This is where we live. ITD does not live here. Now, you have said a couple of times that ITD has rules they have to follow. Well, this is news to us, these rules, because we weren't informed 2 years ago when you started talking to Exxon, whatever it is, Imperial. We weren't informed. So I have two questions. One, were you really planning on making Highway 12 this much wider before they came and talked to you? And two, what can we do? We don't want this. We feel like our rights have been violated.
We.
I'm talking about...
Here! Yeah! We don't want it!
I'm talking about 90% of the people in this room.
That's we.
I'm not, you may not be there and he may not be there. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking for you.
Well,
But I'm speaking, I want to know, what can we,
I'll stick to your
90% of us,
question.
what can we
Let's stick to
do?
your question.
Okay.
Could you rephrase the first one for me?
The first one is, would you have actually made Highway 12 this much wider, and if so, why?
We are,
And why would you have taken all that tax money to do it?
what we did on Highway 12, that was a segment where we had a deficient roadway and the way we test pavements. And when we come back through on it to widen those pavements, to be able to support the full width, we need to have a 28-foot wide pavement, which is what is the safety design standard we have in all of the lock stores. What we're trying to do is 28 feet, and most of it is right now. And this was one of the
I'm
last
still not sure. Can you just
segments
say why? Why did we need that?
for safety. We put a safety shoulder on every roadway that we can, and we have been running a 24 to 26-foot wide roadway there for many years. And this was a safety improvement that's been planned. We've been working with the Forest Service on this. We put 3 fish-friendly structures in. I'll bet we've been in the planning phase on that for 10 years,
Okay, then
long before we heard
question
from
two.
these folks. So,
Is there anything we can do to feel like we are being represented or being heard? Anything? Other than talking to you, but I don't feel like that's done any good because you already quoted on the phone.
yeah, well, what you can do is that we've asked you to put your comments of things that you feel are impacts that you don't think we've addressed,
That's not what I'm asking.
so that they can either be addressed or we can get your feelings on that. So if it's
What
just
can
your
we do-
thought,
What can we do to stop it? What can we do to stop it? I think you guys have, I will tell you, I think you've addressed a lot of issues. You really have. Some are going to be unforeseen that maybe you haven't addressed. That always happens. There's no way you can address them all. You've addressed many issues. But I'm asking you, what can we do to stop this if we really don't want it? What can we do?
you know, I couldn't advise you, and I don't know. I'm telling you that within the permitting process, I can even go through what we normally do for a permit. And as far as what would be other avenues that you could do to keep that permit from being issued, that I do not have an answer for you.
Could you give us an example of any time you have denied a permit of this kind,
I'll ask Mugo, who does our permits, he's out of Boise, he's recommended.
As far as denying permits, if they don't meet our requirements.
I'd like a specific example.
There was one time a customer wanted to move something heavy on a roadway. We ran it through our bridge analysis. It was too heavy and we told them no. So there are requirements they have to meet in order for us to issue a permit.
This is 1967?
Oh, this happens, there's a lot of overweight oversized loads that are being moved out there on all highways. So it's not uncommon every week to deny somebody a permit. Now, they may come back with a different configuration or a different route. We analyze that, and if they meet all the requirements, and we also get the approval of the district, then they would be approved. But they do have to meet our requirements before they issue that permit.
I want to move this side of the room to the Texas Gentleman change.
Why couldn't these be made on site or?
When we're looking at a project in a remote place in Alberta, you have to build a construction camp. And if you build a construction camp, it costs you a lot of money. Also, the productivity in the wintertime up in northeastern Alberta, it's cold, and so you lose productivity. And so the real secret on building a large project in a remote area, whether it's in North America or anywhere else in the world, is to try and maximize your manufacture of process equipment and buildings off-site, and then move them to site and assemble them there.
In Asian, so you could, you're cheap.
Okay, so not necessarily. the majority of equipment that we're moving to our site comes from Canada, okay? A couple of examples where we are bringing in special electrical equipment from the United States that is not built in Canada, and the U.S. is the most competitive supplier. There's other electrical equipment. Just recently we moved in some electrical equipment from Germany. Again, this equipment was bid worldwide. We looked at cost, schedule, and quality of the equipment. In this case, the German company performed better than a North American, specifically a U.S. company, and we just recently moved that to site. The process equipments that we're building in Korea are specialized pieces of process equipment, and they have the skill and the resources to
Canadians
build.
aren't smart enough to build this.
Oh, I think, in the future, you may see some of this type of equipment being manufactured in Canada or somewhere in the United States to be moved to site. But right now, as you're aware, there's a lot of very efficient pieces of equipment that come around from the rest of the world that are very competitive.
All the way across the ocean,
Yep,
drag it all the way through our backyard.
that's correct.
Thanks a lot.